All right, I think we are on. I see cameras coming on. I haven't seen anyone in chat yet, so I'm going to do the customary wait for a couple seconds and make sure that everyone can hear me and everything's looking fine. And then we will get started here on Dev Diary, or Dev Stream, I should say, number 8. So as soon as people can see me, hey, look, there we go. Ivory Knight, the first. See, Ivory, you're the first person to respond in Twitch chat. You may have missed the forums 2 times in a row, but at least Twitch chat, you're good up there. That's fun. Well, everyone, welcome to DevStream number 8. We're really excited to have everyone here today. It's going to be a fun show. We have a ton to go over. I know that this has been a topic that many of you have mentioned both on the forums and in previous chats, and there's been a lot of eagerness around it. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking about music and sound and all good stuff audible into your sweet ears. So I am joined today, first off here by Identity. We have Robin and Yannick, our duo composer team. Robin, Yannick, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, there we go. Hopefully everyone can hear you just fine. It is really fun to have you guys on here. We've been working together for a while now. It's been, I wish I logged the date when I first met both of you guys. It's been a good time exploring some of this music together.
Yeah, it's been a great time so far. Yeah.
I think 1.5 years already.
Yeah.
Or even more.
And where are you two located?
Well, we are in Bavaria, in Germany, in southern Germany. And I'm at Robin's place right now because he lives in a different city than I do. And but we want to share the same view for you.
Yeah, we want to be in the same room so you can get the full experience.
Yeah.
And I love that you guys are showing some swag shirts today. You have your Black Sea Games t-shirts on. I think you guys got those at Gamescom last year, right?
Yeah. Thanks again for that.
That's awesome. So why don't we start with Robin? So, Robin, why don't you tell everyone a little about yourself? You know, you're a composer, but I'm guessing you also play music too. Do you have kind of an instrument? Is kind of your main instrument that you play?
Yeah, my main instrument, I would say, is probably the church organ. Of course, that also means that I can also play the piano, of course, and it helps for composing music, being able to play the piano. But my main instrument, yes, is the church organ. I would say I started when I was, I think, 15 years old. And before that, it was 5 years of piano lessons, just to train myself to be ready. So church organ. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, some synthesizer programming as well, but yeah.
Like you say, church organ is kind of you have a full orchestra at hand, right?
Yeah, it's basically a church organ is basically a full mechanical orchestra at your fingertips.
I've always found, church organ is such a huge sound, like such a dynamic range of sound. One of my first trips to Europe, I was in Salzburg on holiday, and there was a church organist warming up in the big cathedral in the middle of Salzburg, and it was just awe-inspiring hearing that. So what a cool instrument to play. But you're also, I should also say, you play a lot of games too. I know you. I believe you're a very big Knights of Honor fan.
Oh yes, I am a very big Knights of Honor fan. In fact, I even got the original Knights of Honor with me today.
Look at that.
That's how it looked like in Germany in the year of 2004. I think it was released in October. That's how it looked like. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I know. It's I think you have like 1,000+ hours on Knights of Honor 1 at least logged or something like that. It's you're a hardcore.
Oh yes, I'm a hardcore fan. I think you could say that. Back then there was no Steam back then, so there was a program called Xfire, and it also tracked the hours you played it. So yeah, it was over 1,000. I had no life.
What was the kingdom that you played? What was your favorite kingdom?
Well, usually the Holy Roman Empire, which is the medieval version of Germany, in some kind of way. And yeah, I really enjoyed it playing because you could, like, you had the cities you already know from your, from like being around in Germany. And you can see the same cities in the game, and you can experience the medieval version of your own country. That was really interesting and exciting for me back then.
Awesome. And Yannick, you're a piano player as well, right? That's your training?
Yeah, that's my main instrument. For quite a long time, I wanted to be like a professional piano player, but when I realized, or when I got told that I'm more like the bone-breaking kind of piano player with no technique and no nothing at all, I thought, well, maybe don't do it, and I switched over to composing, which I actually enjoy, and yeah, so it's good to not be doing that. I think it was a good decision. Video game music piano arrangements
wow.
Now and then, yeah. So
it's
still part of my job. Yeah.
I love the I have one of my questions I have for you on my sheet is what got you into composing, and the answer is, well, I was told I couldn't make it as a piano player professionally, so it was my fallback gig. I think you're doing a pretty good job on composing, so that's working out well.
Yeah, I think that's the choice to become a video game composer. I chose later in life. When I was a kid, I wanted to become a pianist, but then I thought, well, composing is much cooler for me, and I enjoy it much more.
That's some kind of a different. I don't think that's actually true, but almost like the old adage is like if you can't do, teach or whatever. In the music world, is if you can't perform, compose. Like that's the fallback plan.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's two different disciplines, like completely different way how to handle music, and yeah, some like to perform, some like to create. I think it's.
But actually, the piano playing got me into composing in some way, because I always, I didn't want to practice what I should have been practicing from my teacher, and I rather play all my favorite video game tunes and film music songs on the piano by ear. So, and then I started rearranging and at some time composing. Yeah, that's how it went.
And you were you a Knights of Honor fan as well? Did you play a decent amount of Knights of Honor?
Yeah, I played some rounds, but it turned out that what I'm really good at in Knights of Honor is losing, and I think we had a multiplayer session once in Sofia, and while the two of you were battling it out and for life and death, I was silently losing in my own province without any involvement from outside, but without no AI involved. But I was just losing for myself. Yeah, that's how it went.
In his defense, they had a number of people on the tons of rebels. So yeah.
It was Yannick versus the rebels, and then Robin and me duking it out. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it was a sacrifice for you. I took on all the rebels. That you can have fun.
We've talked about the famous first multiplayer game that I participated in with Robin, and losing to Robin's fabled mercenary rush, which is no longer in the game, but still a fun story that we've told on this channel many times on the different dev streams. So now you all are meeting the famous Robin that handed a loss to me by mercenary assassination. That was quite the moment. I was quite mad. I think Robin just heard me going, "What?" I ranted, I think, for the whole rest of the day about that.
Yeah. Well, Brad thought I cheated, but well, there was just a mercenary camp right next to Constantinople. I was playing the Byzantine Empire, and it spawned right next to Constantinople, and so I thought, well, why not use it and rush Brad?
Yep. And the rest, as they say, is history. Knights of Honor 2 history, we should say. Well, let's get into our topic here, because I know we want to get into the music and people want to hear some new stuff. We have some tracks to play. We have some new footage. I know some of the tracks and footage you guys have probably seen on the Dev Diary itself. We have one music track that we didn't show in the Dev Diary, so that's going to be fun to treat you guys with. I know there's been a lot of clamoring for new content on the Dev stream, so hooray! We got a lot of new stuff we're going to show off today. It's going to be fun. So to kind of start off here, you talked about finding the right tone for the game. Knights of Honor has been we see it in a lot of different forum posts and on some of the video comments that the music was a big part of making Knights of Honor this immersive experience. So, is is the Knights of Honor, I mean, you, with Rob with 1,000+ hours, I imagine you're very familiar, but is this really a soundtrack that you guys dug into as you were first getting started on this project, or one that you were really familiar with and kind of understood as a composer?
Well, we didn't have to really dig into the old soundtrack because we were used to it, you know. When you play the first game for 1,000 hours, you probably know the music. And well, but still, it was very important for us, since the game we are talking about here right now, after all, it's a sequel, and it's a long-awaited, highly anticipated sequel, especially for me. So it was important that the music we write and we contribute still feels like Knights of Honor. You know, it shouldn't feel like a different game. It has to. We always have to remind ourselves that it's the sequel, and we're part of a legacy before us.
Yeah, and would you say that it's something you really drew inspiration from when it comes to how you approach the new soundtrack?
Yeah, so absolutely. I think since it's a sequel, we had to look at the first soundtrack from a kind of different perspective than just enjoying it, but to analyze it a bit and find out what are the key elements that make it sound like Knights of Honor. And of course, since it's a sequel that we're working on now, we wanted to bring this in again and to have, of course, some influence, because it's a new game in the series. So it has been an inspiration for us, of course.
Yeah, and those key elements are something you really try to wrap into some of the sound, the musical instrument choices and the tone of the music. And how did you go about kind of identifying those key elements? What are some of the exercises maybe you went through?
Well, basically, playing the old soundtrack on the piano is a good start, because then we see okay, like what are the harmonies? How is the arrangement, and then you just listen to it and you identify what are the key instruments. Do you have any like leading voices? Like one of the instruments you can hear a lot in the first game is actually medieval recorders and flutes and also the oboe. And like you then take these instruments and you say, okay, for the parts which should sound more like the first game, or they should be in the same, should stand in the same hue as the first game, and you take the same instruments and use them again to get the same feeling. And it's I think it's all about getting the right feeling, getting the Knights of Honor feeling back into the music. That's the most important.
Yeah, I think the first track that we're going to listen to here, because obviously it's also a new soundtrack, so we're bringing some of your own flavors, so to speak, into the sound and trying to find a way to, in a way, it's not completely changing, but it's evolving and finding new ways to explore how Knights of Honor can come alive in music. But this first track that we're going to show off, and this one was in the Dev Diary, before we play it, this was really working to capture that Knights of Honor sound. Like, that was one of the main exercises here, was can we get that sound to come across, right? Is that something you really...
Yeah, exactly. So we have in the first track what I said just some minutes ago. We have an oboe playing the main melody and also some medieval recorders, and we have medieval lutes in it, and also a viola da gamba, which is another medieval instrument. And yeah, of course it's not the real deal yet. It's not a live orchestra. It's no live instrument yet. So, but you can already get the feeling of the first game in it, and see that it is the same feeling, but it has evolved.
Right. Yeah, I think that's I'm glad you mentioned that, just for everyone that's watching and about to hear this first track. These are we are planning to do some live instrument recording and have that part of the sound of it. But right now, as composers, Yannick and Robin are exploring this with digital sounds. So I still think it sounds pretty good. Like, it actually comes to life nicely. But keep that in mind, that we're going to be using some of those digital sounds to communicate this first version of the track. So why don't we go ahead and get started? I know I have my production guy in the background ready. let's go ahead and queue up our first example for this stream, and we're all going to be quiet and let everyone just listen for a second. This is the Wandering Hills track as an example for Knights of Honor 2. We'll go ahead and let it play. All right, I think we're back. So there you go. For those that didn't have a chance to listen to it in the dev diary, your first taste of some of the Knights of Honor music. Is there anything you guys would like to say about this track? I mean, it's a very awesome, very pretty track. Maybe you can give everyone a little bit of thoughts about how you got into this track and kind of your approach to it.
Well, it is as I said, it has a feeling of the first game. So the way it was important for us to write a melody which feels like it could stand right next to the melodies of the first game. And it doesn't stand out in a bad way. It feels very organic. At the same time, of course, you also have the oboe in it, which the medieval recorders I mentioned before. But you also have an orchestra behind it. And because we actually will record it with a live orchestra, it allowed us to take a more orchestral approach as well to the way like the music was back then, and push it to the next limit. I think that was the goal, and yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it.
I'm seeing the response in chat right now as everyone seems very, very excited. So it looks like you guys are doing a great job so far. Lots of awesomes and bams and beautiful. So yeah, I mean, I have to imagine as someone like you two spend so much effort and time on this stuff. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking, like letting the child go up to school for the first time, and everyone is like, oh goodness, you hope everything goes out okay. So far the response is really positive. So I know that another thing we've talked about a lot through the course of talking about Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign has been that historical inspiration as well. Bringing in some of those even into the game mechanics and obviously gameplay is first. We talked about is one of our pillars. But we want to be historically accurate whenever we can, and from our discussions together, that's also come into play with the music as well. Trying to bring some of that historical flavor and understanding of the instruments and the type of music at the time. Can maybe you talk a little bit about that? Maybe like with your instrument choices and the types of instruments they maybe played back then, and the kind of music they created back then in this era.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we thought that, well, for a game that is set in medieval times, and you are playing the medieval leader of a nation or like of a faction. What could be more immersive or more atmospheric than having some kind of authentic music in it? That starts at instruments that they used in the medieval times. For example, like recorders, Robin already told it, or lutes. I also have like a zither that I inherited from my grandmother that we wanted to, it's not medieval times, but it's still an instrument that is quite old and has evolved quite a long time ago. And we want to record that. And also for other cultures, we might want to use instruments that are traditional for that culture, something like in Arabia, maybe oud or nave flutes, whatever. So we want to keep that a bit authentic. And yeah, the music itself is very special. It's not comparable to what we can hear today. That was when the music theory in that sense started. We had Gregorian hymns that were sung, and that started all the music history, so to say, the modern music history. and we want to incorporate that. And also, we're also listening to old melodies and old tunes from that time, from the Middle Ages. So, because authentic music, that's very atmospheric, we think.
Yeah, I love. We had the picture up there of your grandmother's zither. It's a really cool. It just shows music runs in families and generations, and there's this kind of past and history to it that you get to tap into, even when it comes to some of these sounds that get passed down from generation to generation. And I know the next clip we're going to talk about here is actually, to that point of trying to be historically inspired. One thing I thought was really fun that you guys did early on was look to some of those old melodies that maybe are almost like folk tunes of the time to get passed down from generation to generation, and incorporate our own or your own arrangement of that for the game. So this one here it's called, I guess the translation is The Armed Man. Is that right? How do you pronounce the proper name for it?
Yeah, so the proper name, or the original name, is L'Homme Armé. That's French for the armed man. And that track, that melody goes back to the 15th century, I think. Wow. It's it's about the 100 Years' War that was in the 14th and 15th century. So and it was a melody, and the lyrics as well are taking into account this time and this time of many wars, and so like the lyrics are the armed man has to be feared. It has been proclaimed everywhere that every man should arm themselves with an iron coat. The armed man should be feared. So we thought, wow, that sounds quite much like Knights of Honor.
Very Knights of Honor appropriate, right?
yeah, sure. So why not use the melody in some way in the game?
That's really cool. So I think the next track we're going to show is, Robin and Yannick's kind of Knights of Honor-esque arrangement of the Armed Man. And again, for those that are just joining, you're going to hear the digital version of these sounds right now. But I mean, we're going to be hiring, or we're going to be having soloists and orchestra and live instruments to actually perform these when we do them for real. But obviously, at this point in the project, we're still doing kind of the digital versions. But you're going to hear, so you'll hear that version now, and then later on, we're going to have these beautiful soloists that are going to come and perform these pieces, which will be awesome. So here we go. If we have it queued up, we're going to now watch and listen to The Armed Man. Excellent. There we go. So that's a sample of The Armed Man. Really, really cool. I know when I first heard it, I love the it's fun hearing these sounds that people have been listening to for, honestly, hundreds of years. Coming in this legacy, but we have this chance to bring into Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign. It's such I love that idea when you guys first mentioned it back, in the beginning, and it's come to life so well. I actually think it'd be an awesome thing for the community when you guys, this is a track like Yannick was talking about with a lot of history. So maybe as a fun treat, if you guys want to join our community, community.knightsofhonor.com, and start participating, it'd be awesome to maybe have people that find different versions of this song that they can find, whether it be YouTube links or maybe recordings you drum up. I don't know. I haven't actually done my own research to figure out just how many versions of this song and different people that have sung it and whatnot. But it'd be really fun to just see these, maybe collect some of these awesome different versions of the Armed Man and reference it as we kind of go forward as a community. So really, really, really cool. So another thing that I saw a lot of excitement about, and it's what we talked about in the Dev Diary, is this idea of bringing more cultural music into the game, not just a singular culture. You know, I think it's been an opportunity we wanted to explore a lot when it comes to not just reflecting this kind of very normal European sound, but also exploring a couple other sounds. So is there kind of any specific cultures aside from the European sound we've heard so far that we really focused on exploring first?
Well, besides the European, of course, we have the Arabian culture, and also the cultures which include mainly the pagans and the tribes you can find in medieval Europe. Like, these are the three big cultures, and I think it also shows that Knights of Honor 2 is actually a way bigger game than the first Knights of Honor.
Right.
Just talking about the cultures, I mean, we already had a dev diary about the cultures, I think. And of course, for us, it was very important to also write specific music for the cultures. So not just the Europeans and the Arabians, but also the tribes or pagans. It's a bit difficult to find the right term for the third culture, because it's very connected to religion. After all, especially medieval times, culture was very connected to the religion.
Right.
So yeah, all these cultures have their own unique instruments, which are featured heavily in their music, and they will all be recorded live, as Brad already said, and they will feel very different from each other. I mean, the Arabian music has different chord progressions, different harmonies, different ways how to phrase a melody. And
right.
Same with the pagans and the tribes, it will again be completely different. So you really feel like, oh, there's a different culture, or you just met a different culture in the game.
And the goal is to kind of make, I mean, obviously we can't write every culture. We don't have infinite time to write infinite music, because when you really think about it, there's so many different cultures and musical tastes out there. So I as a starting point, we kind of started with these three different slices. But they're, the goal is to make the music a little more dynamic, right? Like, as you play, depending on where you're playing in the world and what things are happening, the musical repertoire, so to speak, could adjust and shift to kind of reflect the tone and the culture that's up for that area.
Yeah, absolutely. The music feels already very dynamic, just because you're suddenly hearing an Arabian track and playing as a European faction. You somehow the music feels like, oh, it's responding to what the player actually does in the game and which factions he interacts with. Or if you're playing a faction on the Spanish Peninsula, like Leon or Aragon, medieval Spain was a mixture, basically a melting pot of the Arabian culture and the European culture. So you should be able to hear both musical cultures while playing a Spanish kingdom.
Oh, cool, man. That sounds. I love the different tones, and I think we're going to show the first sample of our Arabian music here, and I believe, if I remember correctly, this is an exclusive one. Yes, it is. So we didn't show this one on the Dev Diary, so everyone, world first on the stream. Everyone's going to get a chance to hear this track for the first time on the stream. A little bit of preamble. With the Arabian part of the world, we're still very much working on the visuals. So we just had a couple still screenshots. We don't have any new footage for those environments yet. But this is really about the music and setting the musical mood. So now we're going to play our first Arabian track. We don't really have a name for it aside from Arabian 1 right now. But it's a really pretty, I think, more of a soloist style track that shows some of those unique sounds and instruments we've been talking about. So here you go, world first for the first Arabian track, and we'll go ahead and let that play. All right, we're back. Wow, I love it. I mean, what is that? What is the instrument that we're using on this track? It's really, really cool sounding.
So yeah, we have the nave flute as the soloist, and accompanied by an oud. That's like an Arabian lute, so to say.
Oh wow! So I mean, it has to be really, a unique challenge as a composer to go learn all these different styles of music and instruments and everything. I mean, music is such a huge topic with so many different, arrangement techniques, instrumentations. I mean, how do you approach it as a composer to really start diving into these different cultural and regional musics there?
Yeah, of course you have to spend quite some time. You're right about that. And it's not always easy, especially when we're talking about these three main cultural groups, for example, because it's not always easy to incorporate all musical traditions and styles from this group of cultures into one soundtrack. It's not easy. And you have to find out what maybe reflects best how that could sound. I mean, I think we're still trying to find the right balance on how every culture should sound in the end. But we look at recordings of music from these music traditions, and these regions, and try to find what makes it special and how it sounds like. And it comes down to also to music theory and music history.
I think one of the great things about historical, or basically grand strategy games in general, is that they allow you to immerse yourself in the different cultures throughout history. So by just playing many grand strategy games, you constantly immerse yourself into other cultures as well.
Yeah, that's very true. And I know it's been a lot of fun, even as we've been working really closely together, sharing back and forth different references and different performances, and kind of diving into those cultures. And you learn a lot. I mean, I've learned a lot in this process. It's been a lot of fun. And I think I got this question at Gamescom last year in an interview about, do you see games like Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign, helping people understand new things about the world and about history and cultures. And I mean, it is a game. It's there to be fun. So, that's first and foremost. But I do think you get there's something about being in that world and in those cultures and those environments that get you curious, and you get lost on Wikipedia, learning and seeking things out, and looking at different YouTube videos of different performances when it comes to the music. And it's embracing these experiences that maybe you wouldn't get if you weren't involved or playing a game like this. I think that's really true. Yeah, so I know we have one more sample that we're going to share with everyone. This one was on the Dev Diary, but for people that haven't had a chance to listen to it, and this is, we've had two now that were more soloist type tracks. This one's kind of going back to that more grand sound, but with the Arabian kind of flavor in, the Arabian mix. And one of my personal favorites, actually, I think, of what we've done so far. I remember when I first got the email with this sample, I wrote back, I was like, oh, I love it. It's really cool sound. So we're not going to set it up. We're just going to play it here. This is going to be our fourth track and our final musical sample for this stream. This is our Arabian 2 track. Please take a listen and see what you think. All right, and we're back. I see people responding in chat already. They have very similar reactions than I did. I mean, it's such a really dynamic. I mean, there's so much energy in that track. I love it. I remember when I first heard it, just imagining being in those kingdoms out in that part of the world, and just having that kind of, oh man, go people, right? Like go my people. You get excited about it. And I think it's cool to have these mixes of sounds too. You have like these high energy tracks sometimes that get you going and feel energized, and you have these atmospheric tracks. Yeah, that mix is awesome to kind of vary up the flavor. So really cool. I mean, great job, guys. Now
really
I know we're going to
Thanks.
bring you guys back, and we do want to move on to our next segment. And I know we could talk about music all day, which we have many times.
Yes.
I have a little bit of a music background from a previous life, so Yannick and Robin and I sometimes we'll do our work calls and review stuff, and then next thing you know, 2 hours have gone by and we spent half of it talking about music and sharing things. So that's always been a lot of fun. But we're going to bring Robin and Yannick back in a minute. You're not saying goodbye to them forever. And we'll answer some questions with the composer duo. But thank you so much for the first piece. And now we're going to move on and talk to our sound designer on the project over with Black Sea Games out in Bulgaria. And I'm going to give my awesome behind-the-scenes producer a chance to get her up here. And then we're going to talk with Elena a little bit. So I'm going to kill a little bit of time. And as soon as I get word that we're good, then we will move on with Elena. I think they probably can see you now. So Elena, say hi to everybody.
Hey.
Hey.
Okay.
How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me. I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I love the everyone gets to see kind of like the music studio vibe behind you. You have like your soundproofing on the walls and everything. That's great.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you like it.
So you're with the embedded with the team and Sophia, and you're the sound designer on the project. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. And how did you really get into doing sound design and audio for both for video games or just as a career? Like, what was your inspiration to getting into this?
Well, first I want to mention that I didn't become a piano player, just like Robin and Yannick. I just reminded of myself. And the second, well, the main reason I ended up being a sound designer in the gaming industry is, of course, my passion for video games. But the way I actually got to where I am now, it required me to work on a variety of projects such as movies, some sort of commercials, documentaries, as well as some other smaller video game projects. And now that I'm here, it's awesome.
And you've been having a lot of fun working with Robin and Yannick over the last little bit. Everyone had a chance to meet them today. They're a fun duo, right?
Yeah, they're very fun, and also they're actually very open to discuss so many ideas, and we've actually spent a fair amount of time brainstorming and about what will be the best approach in terms of implementation for this game. And yeah, trust me, we've been going through almost all of the possibilities. So yeah, we've spent time. It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually, I think, a real testament to a lot of people involved in this project. The goal is really to make the best game we can. And the feedback loop and the discussions, it's really easy sometimes to take things personally. You work on music or an implementation for sound or a game design or whatever, and criticism is part of that process of trying to make things better. And I agree. I mean, it's been a lot of fun working with everyone in the audio part of the game. There hasn't been a lot of ego. There's been a lot of eagerness and energy just to make the best audible experience we can. And that's been a great. I've seen the emails flying back and forth, and your documents on how we can try this, and there's been just a lot of collaboration, which has been been very fun. So I know we have just a short time to chat because we're already we'll have other dev diaries or dev streams on music and audio down the road. But I think one thing that we talked a lot about, and it was a discussion that we were just having on the last one, is the idea of these cultural sounds and these different kind of almost like playlists that are different for each different culture. So maybe there's been a lot of questions about how we can do some of that stuff, and it could be kind of cool to maybe give the audience a little bit of a look under the hood, like how do we set these things up so that when you're playing in one part of the world versus the other, technically how do we allow those different soundtracks to change dynamically?
Yeah, well, okay, but first I just wanted to elaborate on something, which is that actually I wouldn't be able to do all of the implementation of the music if it wasn't for the team, especially Alex, who's responsible for the game design, and Anton, who's doing the actual programming, also needed for the implementation. I just wanted to mention that. But getting back to the question, I'll try to explain a little bit about it. Let's start with, okay. Let's say we have various cultural playlists, and the first way in which the audio design for the game starts to branch off into different flavors is indeed the culture, which of course depends on the culture of the kingdom you're playing. With that said, I actually mean that you get to hear mostly the playlists related to the particular culture. But there's also something else going here. And this playlist has its own default behavior, and it contains two different types of tracks, which, for lack of a better word, I'm going to call variables within a formula. And I'm talking about snippets and campaign tracks. And whereas the formula stays the same every time, the variables within, they are randomized every time. Or just simply said, it will look like this, like snippet, pause, campaign track, pause, and then repeat. But I also want to mention that the pauses between those two different types of tracks are also randomized. So you won't be able to notice if there's any sort of pattern, let alone we don't expect the default behavior I just mentioned to be present that much, since we're planning to add tracks from other cultural playlists and only when a relevant event occurs, of course. But also we might want to add some special tracks for the most significant events. But back to the culture events, regarding the events that could trigger a culture change, we are actually splitting them into several categories depending on their priority. And the way those priorities work is the following. Imagine you're playing with a European faction and you haven't heard Arabian track in a long time. And in that case, a low priority event will be just enough to trigger a change. But for example, if you haven't heard Arabian track not a long time ago, then you would need a high priority event to trigger the change, if that makes sense. But that's not
Absolutely.
all of it. I mean, changes in terms of music could appear based on other events as well, not just culture. But the main purpose would be to trigger a change in terms of intensity or moods, if you're not talking about culture. But with that being said, I just wanted to clarify that some of those changes can also preserve some of the cultural logic.
Yeah, no, it's been something we've talked about a little bit, but this idea of having what we call snippets, which are the kind of shorter mood pieces, and then our more campaign tracks, where it's a little bit more longer and in depth, and mixing up those links and those the pacing of the music coming in, and also letting some of the awesome, and we'll have maybe a dev diary on this later on, some of the sound effects a chance to speak, where you have these moments where there isn't music, but there is awesome sound effects and atmospheres to kind of bring you into that environment is really cool. Another thing that I think you touched on that's a really neat, something that we tried that didn't work out, because sometimes we try things that doesn't work out. When we were first experimenting with these, we were talking about like the snippets and the pauses and the campaign tracks. We actually had non-randomized time between each of the different tracks. You'd have a snippet and then a period of time, and then a snippet and a period of time, and those were all the same length. And we actually, when we were playing it and kind of play testing it, the feedback that everyone was getting is it felt off, like something didn't feel right. And it's so weird how some of these little things can make a big difference. It felt artificial, and it was, because it was this very consistent amount of distance, amount of time between each track. And I think we all discussed and tried what you just described, which is randomizing the distance between those different snippets and tracks. And once you had a little bit of variable length between the silence and the music, all of a sudden it felt better. Like it felt right. It felt more immersive. And it's one of these little like subtle things about bringing a game together and experimenting and trying things, where sometimes you have an idea and you try it and it's like, oh, for some reason that didn't feel quite right, and then you collaborate and you tweak some things and come back and try again, and it really does those differences can make a huge impact on how everything comes alive. So really cool. Now, I know you talked a little bit about kind of big events and how we're gonna mix in some of those. I know like one of the big events is things like going to war and having snippets or tracks that really affect that. But I think it's really cool what you mentioned, where sometimes even if you're not in, say, the Arabian culture, a big event is happening, we may throw in one of those flavor tracks in just to kind of mix up the sound. I mean, the game you play for sometimes very long periods of time, so it adds that variety to come in.
Yeah. Well, did you ask me about the other events or I'm sorry. Can you repeat?
Oh no, it's okay. It's more just like it's a really, I think it's neat how we're kind of experimenting. You mentioned like kind of bringing in some of those cool other tone tracks into like your playlist, even if maybe you're not in that part of the world, just to mix in like the flavor, the different experiences. And I think that's a really cool way of approaching it. It really does add a lot of that dynamics, I think. Don't you agree?
Yeah, definitely. That brings us a lot of variety, and it's great. We just need to be careful with the balance, of course.
Yeah, it's always tricky with that. Now, I think this is all. I know you mentioned, for the events, this concept of triggers, and maybe you could tell people like what are triggers and how does that work? Are those things that are like scripted in the game, or how does that? How do you? What is a trigger, and how does it like cause something to change when it comes to the music?
Well, it's kind of a complex system to explain in a detail, but simply said, the event triggering, which we talked about, is the most common. But there is another thing, and actually the game is tracking what's going on, collects the data, analyze it, and then based on the analysis of the data, we're picking what should the player hear next. And in this particular case, I'm referring to mostly like mood changes of the music, not that much of a cultural changes, and like maybe the music will become more happier or even sad, natural. I don't know, something like that. And
Yeah.
it could also trigger some specific tracks for specific events. Eventually, we're still experimenting on it, so.
Yeah, I know one of the ones we've talked about, which if you think about, we mentioned before about like kind of balancing these things and trying to figure out what works. A big event that I think we want to maybe try to experiment with is if your sovereign dies. Like we have this a big moment when the person that is kind of the figurehead of your kingdom dies, and that could be a cool thing to experiment with, where you trigger off of that and you maybe change the mood for a little bit to reflect that big event in the game, so that really has an impact.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect example of a rare and very significant event, and the music can definitely add a meaning to if it's that rare and significant.
Yeah, it's almost like like the church bells ringing. Like you have this moment, and all of a sudden the whole atmosphere just adjusts, and I mean it's such a big thing where it's like you have these music and audio pieces that come together, and they really do amplify the excitement of certain moments in games, movies, everything. It's such a big part of how we experience things. So sounds like a lot of work on your side to try and experiment with all this stuff. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%.
Well, awesome. I thank you so much for joining us today, Elena. Hopefully everyone had fun hearing some of the technical specifics and details about how we bring all this together. I know there's been a lot of questions about VO and sound effects, so there seems to be a real appetite for information on the audible part of the game. And hopefully we'll be able to have you back on and talk more about this stuff sometime in the future.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And thank you all for having me, and see you on the next sound-related stream, I guess.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Elena. Well, we're going to bring Robin and Yannick. We have about 9 minutes left. We're going to bring Robin and Yannick back on, and we're going to answer some of your questions. I know we have our awesome behind-the-scenes crew gathering some of your questions from the stream. So thank you for all of that support, Elena. It's great. And we're going to start peppering Robin and Yannick with a whole bunch of challenging questions that they're going to look at me and go, we can't answer that. And then I'm going to have to go in and try to answer it. And it's going to be a good back and forth time. We're going to have a blast. So welcome back, guys.
Hi again.
Hi again.
Hello. So let's start off with one that I think is definitely one that's directed right towards you guys. And this came from the forums, and it's from, I'm going to probably, one day we're going to have a whole list of memes of all the ways that I slaughter people's names in this thing. But the person's name is Minsi, I guess, Mensie, Minsai, I don't know. But he or she asks, when we enter the tactical screen, will music change according to the type of battle, or will we use the same overworld music score?
Yeah. So it will definitely change, because at the moment we are experimenting with the campaign music that you see on the campaign map. But when entering the tactical screen, of course, you want to have some battle music. And right at this moment, basically, we are working on music for these battles. And let's hope that they turn out well, and we see what happens from that.
I think they'll turn out. I'm actually very eager to hear the battle songs. I know we've been talking about how we were going to do kind of the battle view music for a while now, and it's been something we've been looking forward to jumping into. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, the next question we're going to answer. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, we do dev diaries associated with all of our dev streams that come out a few days beforehand. You can find out about them on our community site, community.knightsofhonor.com. You can read the dev diary. You can listen to these tracks, some of the tracks we previewed today. And if you ask questions on the dev diary, we do our best to answer as many of them as we can. So we welcome you to join those community. We also have Facebook groups. We have Discord. There's a lot of places for you to get connected to Knights of Honor. And we welcome you to join the Knights of Honor 2 community and talk with us there. So the next question that we have is from Yavar. And he asked a couple of different questions. One of them was about, will there be voice acting in the main menu and in-game, similar to the previous game where narrators say lines like, the medieval world of Knights of Honor awaits you, and stuff like that. And absolutely, we're planning to do VO. We have a lot of VO lines that are in the works. Right now, I get to hear designer voices in my head when we play because we haven't done the official casting and whatnot, but we'll have some unique voices, and I think you're going to be really pleased with that. I also asked about the soundtrack. He or she says, will you consider adding a soundtrack DLC to the assets of the game, which will allow us to download and listen to awesome music of the game? We haven't officially decided or announced, but I know it's something we've definitely talked about. I know Robin and Yannick have mentioned being really excited about sharing the music in a lot of different forms. So stay tuned for more details about that as we get closer to release and talking about how you may be able to get keyed into the Knights of Honor 2 experience. But absolutely, we're going to have some ways for you to consume the soundtrack and enjoy the wonderful music of our duo composer pair here. So that'll definitely be coming. We have a question from Ivory Knight. Ivory Knight, I know you're always there. Hello to Ivory Knight again. I see you were second this time. You got to get better on that refresh, man. So he said, one thing that was, so hold on a second. One thing not really mentioned is how the transitions are made. I've always wanted a game to explore the idea of making the soundtrack feel as if it was one long piece to give the illusion that the song never changes. Are the transitions simply fade in and fade out transitions, or do you musically connect the transitions to make the music feel more fluid and connected, giving the illusion that no transition has taken place at all? And I'll let you guys answer. I know we've talked a little bit about that in the last one, but I'll let you guys answer that one more specifically.
Hello, Ivory Knight. Thanks for your question. We, of course, like this dream of the unlimited and the soundtrack is a great idea, and there are very different ways how to approach this. And actually, this idea of the music, of the player not noticing when the music starts and stops, is a very important aspect for us as well. So that's why we thought about having these musical snippets, which are like short musical pieces, which basically they just blend in so organically into the sound effects that you don't notice them all the time. So it feels like it never stops, or it never goes. The music never goes away. Actually, it goes. It does. There are pauses, there are breaks. Elena just described that, but it never feels like that. And also, when the music starts again, it doesn't feel like, hey, there's music now. Unless, of course, it's an important event or something is happening gameplay related, then you have the big impact, musical impact as well.
Yeah, it's something that we talked about. This is a question that we asked ourselves in the very, very beginning of the project. The very first time we met, there was a conversation about silence, not true silence where you hear nothing, but musical silence versus music playing all the time. And we made a conscious decision that we are going to have musical silence. We're going to have these breaks where the world and the atmosphere come together. Because honestly, I mean, Elena and the team are doing a great job of building the sound design for the game. And there is something about just letting the atmospherics just kind of settle into your ears and then having music come in and speak on its own for times. And so you're going to have those. We're not really going for that one completely musical experience where you're always hearing music playing, but it should be subtle. It should be a thing where unless there's an event that really jumps at you, you're going to have the music kind of just breathe into the experience and come to life, and then recede back and let the sounds come back up and take dominance. And I think we have experimented with that some. I think it actually works quite well. It feels really good.
Well, yes, one of the best features of Knights of Honor is the world map, just how alive everything feels like. And I think the sound effects, they contribute to that, like in a very like big way, an important way. And if you have wall-to-wall music and music all the time, you just take, I think you take away a little bit of that, that feel that the world is alive and it can stand on its own. I think having some pauses and breaks and letting the sound design breathe, for letting the music breathe and letting the sound design be in the spotlight for a certain amount of time really helps to immerse yourself into the medieval world.
Absolutely. I know we're going a little bit behind, but I do want to grab a couple questions from the stream real quick. So one of them I have, and this one's going to be a quick one. I know that my wonderful producer just threw this image back up on the screen yet again. So Niners_gaming asks, will there be an own sound or an individual sound or soundtrack for the War Goats? We just saw the War Goats on the screen again. Maybe War Goat sound is something that we do need to talk about and add in. I know that the War Goat is now our mascot for the stream, it seems. And I have a feeling that from now on, Alex is going to find some way to sneak that image in there. So hooray. Elaine, I know you're listening. You have a War Goat sound that we may have to add. Maybe we'll add it for the stream first. When the War Goat shows up, we can play with who knows. We'll see how it goes. Another question that was asked, I thought was another good one, and I'm going to slaughter this name. Ian Tiuri, I think, asked, I wonder if they did some remasters of some of the original soundtracks. We haven't yet. We have talked about maybe drawing some inspiration from the original Knights of Honor tracks, but we don't have any commitment there on whether we will or not. So I think you're going to have to wait and see if that's something we explore. It's tricky because though I think we've grabbed a lot of inspiration from Knights of Honor 2's soundtrack is going to be its own thing. It's have its own style, its own tone, and we are trying to take some new approaches. So I think that'll be a fun balancing act to figure out, if we can maybe bring some tips of the hat to melodies or sounds from the previous game that you may recognize. So we definitely talked about it though a little bit, so we'll see. Let's grab one more question here. Let's see. Kermit the Frog asked, Kermit the Frag asked about purchasing the soundtrack. We talked about that a little bit. And then, let's grab this one. I think this is a good one for you guys. So Kermit the Frag asked, so is this like a shuffled playlist except each track is a part/snippet of a greater music composition and the tracks are shuffled around to give the whole music a more dynamic vibe, or is it something different than that? I think they're really asking about the difference between the snippets and the actual full tracks and how they kind of interconnect with each other.
Well, it depends. Some of the snippets reuse melodies of bigger tracks. So you have like a connection, and you could even, we tried that. We even combined various snippets and noticed that, it can stand on its own. It's a satisfying musical track on its own, just combining these three snippets. And other snippets don't reuse melodies from the bigger tracks. They completely stand on their own. So it's a mixture of both.
Awesome. And one last question, actually, because it's a short one, I think. Skull Drinker asks, what libraries are being used for the music? I don't know if that's something you can talk about or not, but is there any kind of, behind the scenes, like this is some of the technical stuff that we use when we're working on composing and whatnot?
Yeah, so of course a big part of these libraries that we use are the medieval instruments, and there are not a lot of really great medieval instrument libraries, sample libraries out there in the market, but we use those that can be used, and having a good time. But I think the live recordings will make it sound way better and will add a completely new experience to the music.
Absolutely,
because it adds life and adds spirit of what I think it's much more pleasing to listen to.
Excellent. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining DevStream number 8. It's been a lot of fun talking about the music and the audio of the game for the first time. I know that it's been an eager topic for our community. It's been a very eager topic for us to finally share some of this, some of these teases, and we're excited to share more down the road. I hope you had a great time listening and having an audible world first, I guess, for the Knights of Honor 2 community. We don't have any exact topic for the next Dev Diary or DevStream yet. We do have a plan to do it in about 4 weeks, so stay tuned. And we'll be announcing what that topic will be on our social channels. And speaking of social channels, there's quite a few of them for you to get involved with. So we encourage you to join community.knightsofhonor.com and participate in our forum community. That's where the Dev Diaries are posted. We always try to grab a number of those questions up there. You can race Ivory Knight to the top of the pile to see you can respond to the Dev Diary first. You could use some challenge there. And we also have Facebook. We have our Discord server where I know there's some lively discussion going on. So we really encourage you to get plugged in. We're going to keep on talking about cool things and exposing more. I know that in the next coming months, the plan is to show some new exclusive gameplay footage here. So you're going to start seeing a couple things ramp up a little bit more visuals shown, and I think you're going to be really excited to on the different elements we're going to be able to show you. So thank you so much for joining us, Robin and Yannick. It's been an absolute pleasure. I know everyone else seems to have enjoyed it too.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure for us as well. Thanks for all the great questions, and thanks for having us.
Yeah, the Knights of Honor community has always been great, and we're very happy to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and hopefully, Robin's not going to end up getting too much reputation of being the king of Knights of Honor 2 multiplayer. We'll have maybe we'll do a after release at some point in time. We'll do a play against Robin and Yannick day, and we'll see. Or we can do a play against Robin, Brad, and Yannick day, and we'll see how many people in the community can beat us. Only with mercenary camps turned off, though. No mercenary camps.
Okay, just because it's you, Brad, we will turn off the mercenary camps.
Oh man! And Elena, again, I know you're in the background. Thanks for joining us. I want to thank Alex and Alex and Elena on the production side for all their help. It's been a great time, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time. Take care.